Just an update. They have contacted us. I talked to Brian Hansen once, and he did get a hold of Brian and Patrick here. They are thinking about doing something down at Aspen. Not a whole lot of details yet, but I just thought I'd pass that on to you guys that they are looking at. I don't know if it would just be fields and lights, or if it would be actually a building. I think they're still kind of working out what they want to do, and then they'll obviously come to us and talk more about it. So just so you guys are in the loop, it's being discussed.
So they're thinking of like a build at Aspen, not just using existing space.
Right, yep. Having their own like designated, I don't know what yet, something. Yep, which would probably be, down by the hockey building in that area.
Okay, thank you, Devin. Anybody have any questions on that? Yeah. It is. All right. Item number 7, which is the bulk of the agenda as far as the items that were attached to it. Park CIP items 3 to 17.
Yep, so this is, I did go through the CIP list that we had from before and made some updates as to the projects that we have done or haven't done. Then I kind of made a summary one saying what years are currently budgeted for what amount of money. The only fix I gotta do is on yours for Aspen Park in 2026. Instead of saying 6.2 million, it should be 3.2 million. Because it's gonna be one or the other of those projects, not both. Unless we get both approved, but I don't think that's gonna happen. So other than that, it's just a matter of discussion. You guys wanna shift things around, change things, add things, delete things, whatever. Yes, everything in yellow has been done. I didn't highlight anything for 2025, assuming we're gonna do all those things, but you never know. So currently, in theory, for 2026, we have 3.2 million worth of projects, which are all at Aspen, but
So based on recent discussions, et cetera, revenues from 24, was there any movement on finding something for 25 at all?
Do we have money for 25?
yeah, 25. So this year, we are doing the lights on Field C at Aspen. We are renovating the restroom at McCarty Park. We are irrigating the soccer fields at Pioneer Park. I think we moved that from Stone Ridge to Pioneer. We're gonna try and do better on the soccer fields down there. We've got 100,000 for pool improvements, which is we're gonna replace filters, update the lights in the locker rooms, update all the drinking fountains. We're talking about updating the surge tank, which needs to be done, but we're gonna coordinate that when and if they move the lift station behind the pool. So that's not happening this year, so we're scratching the surge tank for this year, and we'll just hopefully do it next year, hopefully.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to be so mysterious about that. I just know it was up in the air for a while and we weren't sure what sort of commitment we were gonna get based on what 24 looked like. So as of right now, that whole list that you just went through, Devin, we have $25 dedicated to it?
450.
Right, yeah, I'm sorry, 2025.
Yep. Yeah, that's what we're spending on projects this year. Yeah, if you go down the list, in theory, in 2026, it's 3.2 million. 2027, we only have 100,000 on the list. 28 is 460, 29 is 510, 2030 is 600.
Well, I would somewhat debate 26 numbers and the fact that it's really more 200,000 for parks, but you know, admittedly, yeah,
I mean, $3 million is streets.
right.
Right.
So have we begun the process? What are we doing for the lights? I mean, have we started reaching?
Yeah, Musco's got it again. They'll start as soon as the ground thaws out and they can dig holes, things like that. So if you remember right, they're gonna finish all of field C, and then they're gonna move ahead to field D, because we already moved ahead from B to C with extra money, so they're gonna do the same thing, so it'll kinda keep us going. So in theory, in 2026, we wanna do field D. And then we'll take a year off while we do concrete from where we left off up to the north concession stand, and then hopefully jump right back into lights. Hopefully.
I know it's really early in the winter, but there can't be a whole lot of frost in the ground, right? I mean, it's not very deep. I know I pulled some stuff out of my ground in earlier this month. It was not frozen at all. So if that continues, would they be prepared to start maybe earlier than normal so that they'd be out of there before softball starts?
They usually try to get here as soon as they can, as soon as they get the crew that is available to do, you know, the removals, things like that. So I'll sure touch base with them and just see if they're thinking of doing anything any earlier.
Thanks, Randy. That's the kiss of death. Just let the
We need some moisture.
let the record reflect that if it all turns to crud here,
That's right. Or my wife's letting snow on the snowman on her porch. We've been accused of that too, so.
I
Devin,
know-
has
sorry,
a
go ahead.
school or anybody talked about anything more with turfing a softball field? I know there were some talks about turfing a softball field and getting it up to the standard of First National Bank Field. Have you heard anything more on that? I haven't, so I'm just wondering if anybody's.
No, the old coach Christensen, but he's no longer the high school coach, so I don't know if that, he was kind of looking into that and spearheading that, and that's been 2 years ago now he talked to me. So no, I haven't heard anything else since then.
That would be really nice, but obviously we can't do that alone.
No.
You know, I guess I'm not sure what the rest of the committee's thoughts are. You know, I feel like we laid out a pretty good strategy here, and we're pretty committed now. I think the one thing that's lacking is dollars for other parks within the system, just because of what we're undertaking in Aspen is so expensive. But from a safety perspective, it needs to be done. You know, I guess my concern is I don't want to use up all the committee's capital for a major project on Ironwood, right? And I feel like we're going to by default have that happen to us if that's the direction that it goes. So, you know, I think it would be good for us to do a little bit of strategic thinking as a group and talking with council, and certainly Randy is our representative, to see if there's not a year, 26, 27, 28, you know, that we can find a little bit more, because while the improvements to Aspen are great, that means other things are not getting done. And I think it's we can pretty easily get accused of having a favorite park, just, right? And so that's the one thing. I mean, and I know it's intentionally that, I mean, we're not intentionally doing that, but from a planning point of view, it's intentionally that way. But that's a hard conversation to have all of a sudden if we're spending $3 million on whatever it is it turns out to be based on what the public approves. It'd be nice to find $500,000 over 2 years to stick into some other parks.
Well, not only the parks, but, you know, we've
talked so long about a trail system or, you know, the bike trails around the city and through there. And so by putting all of our money in the oldest park that Brandon has, so granted it's the oldest park, it needs the most rehab at this time. But, you know, yeah, the bike trails and hiking trails should be somewhere, you know, if we have extra money, we should look at where they need to be, what we need to do, and how we can get them done. Especially if Sioux Falls actually does put that along Rice Street there, you know, that would be nice to tie into on Rice, but. So.
Especially as we're adding more housing developments in those areas where we can't get accessibility to town.
I completely agree, but there's a lot of, especially DOT and state grants out there for that, and we need to be really aggressive about it. Just from a city perspective, I know Tammy's really bored and doesn't have a lot to do. But I mean, to me, that's one of the things that we can use as some leverage of, hey, we've got this, you know, we need a 25% matching grant or whatever. I think that becomes an easier discussion with council. So to me, that's where the impetus needs to come from for that, as opposed to us just saying, hey, we want 250,000 for trails. That's a lot harder of a discussion.
We are working through CIP items right now, and so I do have a 10-year plan put together for shared use paths. A lot of it would be, you know, applying for grant funds and stuff with the DOT. I can share that with you next month, and then we can kind of look through it. I try not to get my hopes up on it because I feel like it's the first thing to get cut every year from the budget, but I'll show you the plan, and then we can see.
Well, I think that's a huge step forward, obviously. And the other part about it too is we can be pragmatic about it, right? So all of a sudden the road name escaped out of my head off to the west. Gravel road goes by. But thank you. You know, we can also make progress off of projects like that, and the fact that there's going to be a side trail that's really going to serve effectively for Brandon, and it's part of the project, right? So that's where us representing ourselves and pushing for that kind of things when there's improvement projects, whether it's Wright Street or otherwise, we need to make sure we're in the game too then, right? So. I think the pickleball one's a huge one. You know, we're probably behind the eight ball.
Do you think they will though? They're really happy with.
Yeah, I've talked to them. They are extremely happy with the new ones.
Yeah. Oh, they
Yeah, they haven't been back to Aspen since.
right. They're up there. They've moved in. What's it called Christensen Park. Yeah. Christensen Park. They're really happy with those courts after they've been up there, and their numbers have grown because of that. And we've had really good reports on that. I know I've heard, and I know Devin's heard about that. So I think that's kind of a moot. I think it's a dead issue. Honestly, I haven't heard anything regarding that, and I was hearing every couple of weeks. Couple people that I know that played that, they would report every couple of weeks on their numbers and that kind of stuff. And since they've moved up to Christensen Park, they are extremely happy. They have enough room. They've had even growing numbers, and they're happy with it. So I really think, Adam, that might be a dead issue at this point.
I would agree. My only concern is success breeds success, right? And then why don't we have one on my side of town kind of conversation? So. I think those are good comments, Adam. I know, you know, the signage thing has been somewhat pragmatic as well. As we have projects, we try to knock one off or two off, and the new trail connection into Big Sioux, I know one was done. How many do we have kind of in general that are still?
That needs signs. I mean, you're talking just like the main park sign. Stone Ridge still needs one. Christensen Park, but he will do that one.
Well, I mean, I think a little bit of that we can knock off kind of if we have some good bids on stuff and, you know, we have $10,000, we can do a new park sign somewhere or two, right? So I think that's a good filler thing. Wayfinding stuff's a little bit more difficult, but need to have kind of a plan first, which we don't have.
So Conservation Committee has been talking about, you know, wrapping like the utility boxes and stuff around town. But then it was, well, what are we gonna put on it? You know, downtown Sioux Falls does like art and that sort of thing. But then we kinda thought maybe we could incorporate some wayfinding or something into that too. So maybe let them run with it a little bit and then they can bring their ideas here. And I don't even know if that's an option to wrap ours, but it's at least a conversation.
Well, that was all some really good conversation. You know, let's kind of obviously we're not going to make any changes for 25. I mean, Devin, just keep us abreast as to how stuff's going. And if we can do some little improvement projects, whether it's signage or whatever, please let us know.
Well, I know, what did Brian say? He wants us to have our CIP stuff by, I don't know, he gave us a date, yeah. And he just wants 5 years at a time, basically is what we're looking at, so. We can still think of stuff, we can just leave it on for another meeting and then start to put stuff together from there.
Yeah, let's plan on coming back with everybody's recommendations. And I think today was more food for thought. And we can reflect on it here over the next month and come back and have a bit of a better conversation. And Tammy will get out her trail stuff to us and we'll be rocking. Anything else on CIP? All right, item number 8, tree board. You got anything, Devin?
And probably Tammy will do more of this talking, but so, where to start here? We are working on our ash tree list for this year. It's, Richland Park. There are 75 ash trees in there. We are talking about the sidewalks in there are also in poor shape. So we are discussing, which is where you guys come in, on possibly not giving people choices this year as to whether they treat their trees or not. And then there's also a fair amount of non-ash trees that are breaking up sidewalks also. We don't have a number on that yet. And then one other thing to add to, the golf course is looking to join up with our ash tree removal program and have them come down to the golf course and also remove trees. And we're still kind of working through that on how much more we would budget, but I think that's more next year than this year. Since our, yeah, but I'll let you kind of fill in.
So Richland Park is over by Aspen Park, kind of between Aspen Park and Sioux. And then like Nicholas going into Twin Rivers, the new development. So that whole area, they definitely have the worst sidewalks in town. The majority of them are under 3 feet wide, so ADA compliance has to be at least 4. Our standard is 5. They already have kind of small boulevards, and they have these huge, massive trees, which are beautiful, but they're wrecking the curb and our sewer main, there's like two different spots where they're wrecking the sewer main. And then some of that sidewalk, I mean, it'd be better just to remove the sidewalk. And so we've kind of been going back and forth, like, we can't just allow them to treat the trees because they're causing infrastructure damage too. But there's a lot more than just ash trees that will have to come out too. So we're kind of looking at options there. You know, when we put in that 5-foot sidewalk, their boulevard's gonna be even smaller, so we're not gonna be able to replace trees in the boulevard. So there was a little bit of discussion about, you know, do we give them vouchers this year? We haven't been doing that in the past, but then at least they could plant a tree on their private property. But at the same time, we're also paying to remove these trees where other communities are putting it on the homeowner. So I guess it's just kind of a discussion on how much we should really be spending.
The greedy park board member of myself, I would rather, and you're gonna kick me, so please don't. I'd rather take our tree money and put it into another neighborhood, cause walk replacement and tearing out trees associated with that, that's part of doing that work, right? I don't feel like the park, our tree fund should go into that now. I know we only have so much money and cost to do something we're not expecting needs to come from somewhere, but that's just how I'm feeling.
So you have 50,000 for tree removals and then 15,000 for tree trimming. So we have 65,000 total. A sidewalk budget, we only have 50,000. So even if we remove all the trees, we still can't put in all the sidewalks. We're gonna have to do it street by street. I mean, we're gonna be way behind. So that's another thing that gets cut every year, first thing off the budget.
So when we repair sidewalks, like in front of my house, my sidewalk gets damaged and it has to be repaired. Does that get assessed to me as the homeowner? Or the city just pays for that?
City pays for it. So, you know, we have miscellaneous complaints throughout town, so we add them as we can, but we've been trying to fix the sidewalk within our slurry seal project. So the year before we do slurry seal, well, we wanna get 2 years before slurry seal, we do all the concrete repairs. Then we can come in the next year, do all the asphalt and crack sealing, that sort of thing, and then that third year do slurry seal. So that's kind of the rotation that we're trying to get on. It's very difficult. And now we're on to this neighborhood, which is even more difficult because now we gotta spend a year just removing trees.
How many neighborhoods are left, Evan, overall?
6. No, we've done 6. Well, in theory, yes. Now the downside of that is they're getting bigger. So our areas are getting smaller. So like, especially Alpine Circle, that neighborhood is not until 2028. And I've narrowed it down to just like 1, 2, 4 short-ish streets, and there's still 76 giant ash trees there. Now, some of those are already showing signs, so we might have to just jump around and take out some sick trees this year. And then that's not including all of the core. In theory, at the time we made the map, we thought the core project would carry on, and that would just take care of all the trees on its own. If we're gonna pause that for any great length of time, we'll probably have to take care of those one way or the other then anyway. So could go, in theory, we're supposed to be done in 2030. I think it's gonna stretch on for a little while after that. And we're never gonna be done, because once we're done, we're gonna have to contact everybody that's treating their tree and just make sure they're still treating their tree.
There's always randoms that get missed, right? Tammy, what projects do we have bidding this year? I mean, I know you're looking for dollars to do the sidewalk project, right? I mean, is there a chance that we get some decent bids on stuff and find some money that way?
You know, we really don't have that much this year. Because one of our big projects was gonna be Ironwood or Aspen, and that's getting pushed. We're not doing a street reconstruction project. And so I feel like we don't have very many contractors in town. So we will have a sidewalk project for that 50,000 do have 25,000 for repairing shared use path. So there's kind of a small concrete project that is under the bid limit, so we really wouldn't even have to bid it out. And then we have a couple drainage projects, so slurry seal. So there's not much for me to save on.
So
Yeah.
it really does make sense to try to push all that into one project for that neighborhood.
It does.
Boom.
Yeah, I hear ya. It's nice when we have those big contractors in town doing the core area and stuff because it's easy to be like, hey, since you have your equipment here, can you go over here for a couple days while we're waiting on pavement over here? And they like that too. So I think this year we're just not gonna be able to get that much done with the dollars we have.
So is there another area that we can do and then hopefully have the bigger equipment in town next year to tackle Richland Park? Or not really?
Yeah, I mean, we can jump around anywhere we want. You know, this is on the website. It does say what year, what area is being done, but I haven't gotten a hold of any homeowners yet this year. We did measure Richland Park already, but that's not a big deal. So we can go wherever we want. Really.
I was just thinking, you know, if next year there will be equipment in town for one of the Aspen Park entrances or whatever. And since it's going to be there and maybe that close, maybe it would behoove us to push this area back until next year when they can piggyback a little bit. I don't know.
It just kind of messes up our whole rotation with street maintenance, where we're doing concrete a couple years in advance, and then we're doing the asphalt, and then we're doing slurry seal. You know, we used to try to do all three of those projects in one year, and then just, it was a mess. So I
So-
feel like we're just now getting on it. I know, it's hard.
So really don't kick me. Since it is pretty much a full tree removal, kind of non-discriminatory, what are the chances that those things get at least taken off at the roots and hauled off by the city so that our tree dollars are only going towards stump removal or whatever and walks, and we're maximizing more of our dollars that way?
I don't know that we have the equipment to do those big trees, do we? Or the manpower. Because there's only 3 in parks, and I know we've been trying to hire a couple more in public works, and we haven't hired anybody. They're already short-handed.
Probably don't have that equipment too, do we?
We have a stump grinder.
Stuff right.
Yeah.
That means remove the trees.
Oh, we can remove trees, but then we can't do anything else. That's the whole thing. We can't do.
My point
It takes
is,
a long time. And on a street like that, if we get a phone call and there's a damaged tree or a sick tree or something, if it's a real simple one that's small, we can do it. Otherwise, I like to get a licensed arborist in there who, you know, they know what they're doing. We'll handle everything in the park to a certain point also, but even in McCarty Park, there's some big trees near power lines that I don't think we're gonna mess with those.
yeah, thanks, Devin. I appreciate that. I'm just sitting here, sorry. Now I'm wondering, I mean, what would happen at least if you, Tammy, thought about trying to bid a small demolition project at least that took all the trees off, right, and hauled them out, and that was the job. That's something that can happen in the wintertime or early spring, and, you know, that's outside of a tree removal company and someone like Sukup or First Rate or whoever, all they're doing is demoing trees.
I was thinking about that when I was putting the tree bit together, on if it actually makes sense to keep the tree trimming the same as tree removals on this project, because Sukup could come in, and they have the big equipment, and they could do it super quick. Where, like, they're not gonna do the tree trimming stuff. So, I don't know. I felt like I was gonna maybe call Sukup and just see what they were thinking, because they actually do our core area stuff pretty cheap.
Well, and that's what, I mean, it's just the time of year and they're not doing a lot of snow removal and stuff, right? I mean, not that you want to get too far out in front of it, but it just is way more effective if we could do it that way, I think.
We will get a lot more complaints. When Champion Tree Service takes them down, I don't hear any complaints. When you get a contractor in there ripping them out of the ground, we get a lot of complaints. So it is a little different, but, and I don't know if they're really gonna be able to rip them out like they do in the core area, cause they're removing the street at the same time, you know, so they don't care if they damage the curb. Where here, they are gonna worry
Yeah,
about that.
I'm just,
so.
I guess, sorry, I was being even more simplistic about it. You cut them off at the base, they haul them off, and then the stumps get removed later as part of the project.
Yeah, Sue Cup likes to hook a chain to them and just yank them out, but it's tough that way. But I also wish they would do it before there's leaves and baby birds and squirrels in those trees too, because we get a lot of complaints about that as well.
Well, the squirrels are in there right now.
Well, nobody cares about them when they're cold. Come spring, everybody cares about the squirrels.
The nest and the robin's eggs.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'm just, if someone's contractors are slower, right, they may be willing to do some of that kind of work a little bit more cost efficiently than a tree removal service, that's all.
I mean, can we check with them and say you can't use change?
Well, yes, so it's not just ash trees there that are damaging the sidewalks. I mean, the ash trees are. Yes, that's the thing, if that's the way we go, and we just blanket remove trees, which I don't know if that's what we're really talking about or not, but we'll get lots of complaints if we just wipe them all out, yeah.
Well, I think, so getting back to that budget, Tammy, I think your thought about reserving some of it for vouchers is a good one, because if we've learned anything on the prior removal projects, is the tendency is not to replant something. So if we do have to do a wholesale demolition to improve the logs, then that's gonna leave some significantly blank spots. Make a little bit of money and go even less further. But, you know, whether it's 10 grand in vouchers or something, I think that would be wise.
Yeah, staff is still working on a letter, because I have the letter that I send out annually anyway, but if we're not giving them a choice, the letter's gotta change a fair amount, so we're still working on that.
Well, and I think we need to highlight the tree removal is for the sidewalk repair. The tree and the infrastructure and the sewer and things like that. We're not just, taking the trees out because we wanna take the trees out. It's causing damage, and I'm sure there's people in that area who have had sewer backups and things like that because of the tree roots that will, say, yep, this is causing a problem.
Well, safety
Stop.
wise, I don't think the kids are riding on the sidewalks in that area either, cause they're not safe.
Now they're on the roads.
They are.
It's terrible. Exactly.
Stop blaming the poor trees for bad sewer pipe. I appreciate your brainstorming all that stuff, and it, certainly walking through it, I understand the logic of trying to use some of it. I was just hoping we could shift it into another neighborhood, because I know Public Works is made of lots of money when it comes to these projects. Okay, is there anything else for the benefit of the group? Next, I don't know what, that's the 24 calendar still, so I'm not gonna get get fooled by that. What's the next? So February 19th at 5:15. Everybody good with that still? Adam, does that work for you still?
Yeah, it does.
All right. Any other discussion? All in favor? We are adjourned.